Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
And welcome to episode 44 of The Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, your host here, the board-certified internist, founder of drpierresblog.com. And as always, if you want to head over to my show notes, you're going to go to drpierresblog.com/LLP044. If you want today's show notes, please head over to drpierresblog.com/LLP044. And we have another great episode for you today. Today, the theme is why trying to do everything by yourself is going to end up costing you more in the end, right? And the motivation behind today's episode was I was talking to a couple of my entrepreneur friends, and, they were kind of, listing some of the stuff that they had to do, before things can get done. And, I posed the question, well, why doesn't someone else do it for you? And, they were kind of dumbfounded, right? Because, they had came up, under the guise, and I think especially because these were both physicians, they had came up under that teaching where everything you want to do, you have to kind of do on your own, which is really what we learn a lot during medical residency. And I think they were using the same tactics in business. And I could tell you, I am not innocent in this subject. I definitely have fallen victim to being able to do a lot of things, especially from a technological standpoint. And because of it, I tend to do a lot of things from it. Things that, I don't think. And, just kind of when I was thinking about this episode, it was something I realized, I definitely should not be really focusing all of my efforts over here, because I'm actually, taking money away, right? For so to speak, that's what was happening. The time and commitment I was having to spend on a certain, task and activity, someone else could do it for me for much cheaper and at a quicker rate, right? So this episode, again, I wanted to, you consider this maybe like a health and a personal coaching. And, obviously we're going to definitely tie it into the health, aspect of it, and, how a lot of my patients, will try to solve all of their problems on their own and, won't reach out and ask for help and, get the help that they needed, right? So again, we're going to be talking today to entrepreneurs. We're going to be talking today to my patients and, those who are out there who have some medical issues, but, wants to try to take on all the burden of having to take care of those medical issues, on their own. And, as always, if you head over to drpierresblog.com and the episode is LLP044, you will get the show notes. You'll get, links and videos to all of the things associated with today's episode. All right, everybody, it is Dr. Barry here, and today we're going to be talking about why trying to do everything yourself is not only hurting you, but likely, especially from entrepreneurs, hurting your business, right? And today, this is going to be a health/personal coaching podcast. I like to be able to intertwine the two. On my blog, I tend to write a lot of health/personal coaching blog posts and do video posts as well. And today we're doing the podcast this week, right? And I'll be honest, I was motivated to do this because I've had a couple of friends who are entrepreneurs as well kind of run into the dilemma that they kind of felt overwhelmed. And why were they overwhelmed? Because they were really trying to do everything themselves, right? And these are physician friends, right? So these are like the top type A of the type A, right? Like that spectrum of type A, they're over there. And they are so used to having to do all of these things all on their own that it was troubling for them to even try to give up some of that responsibility. And I fell victim to this as well. I tell you, in fact, this week, as we're leading up to this podcast, right? This week, I was working on, setting up the podcast, and I got this mixer, and I was trying to do something different with the mixer because I have some things planned in the next couple of weeks, right? And I spent like an hour of my time, right? Like I'm telling you, I spent an hour of time, like hour of my time, like is gone. That part of my life is forever, not coming back. And I spent an hour of my time trying to do this thing, and I still did not get it right. Like it took me an hour for me to like finally throw the towel in and say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to email customer service, right? Because clearly I don't know what I'm doing. I know a little bit about a little bit, and that's what tends to happen with a lot of entrepreneurs. They tend to know a lot of aspects about their business, and that tends to happen to all of my, my personal patients out there, and my health, aficionados. They know a lot about their health, right? They know how to get healthy. They know how to stay healthy. And sometimes knowing too much kind of hurts them, right? So they try to do it all on their own, right? So back to me, right? So I was working on this mixer podcast issue. It didn't work. I wasted an hour of my life. And not only did I waste an hour of my life, I couldn't watch Married to Medicine, right? Or Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? So there was two shows that I had an opportunity that I could have watched during that hour. But no, what was I doing? I was messing with the mixer. And at the end of the day, it still didn't work, right? So there goes an hour that I am not getting back, right? And like, I think it segues perfectly to what we're talking about today, right? Like when you get to the point when you're doing everything on your own and you get to that, you hit like a brick wall where like, yeah, like that may work in the beginning, but in the end, right? In the end, you got to give up some of that responsibility, right? Because it's costing you, right? Whether it's costing you time like it did me, whether it's costing you money like it does a lot of my entrepreneurs, like we have to get to a point to understand that like I can't do it all, right? And it's okay that I can't do it all, right? Like no one's Superman. All of your successful business people out there, all of your most successful people, especially when we're thinking about in the health realm, and the ones who are the fittest, the healthiest, who lift the most weights, they always have some type of support system there to get them there. So I want to kind of like break down, why people even get to that point, right? Where they hit this brick wall and say, oh my God, I can't do this anymore, right? So usually like the goal in hand, right? So for my folks who are my healthy folks, right? And when I talk about my healthy folks, these are the ones who come into the doctor's office and they got some goals in their mind. Goals, whether it be like, doc, I'm trying to get healthier. I'm trying to live longer. Like, I don't want to take any medications. Or honestly, doc, I don't want to see you, right? Because, and I can probably speak for especially my male patients. Majority of my male patients, when they come to see me, a lot of times they're been pushed to come to see me, and they needed that extra motivation to come see the doctor's office. Not saying all of them. I know some of my guys are pretty religious when it comes to the doctor's office, but majority of them try to avoid seeing the doctor as much as possible, right? And so their goal, right, is to do what they can outside of the doctor's office to avoid having to come into the doctor's office, right? And that's what they encompass, right? So, they usually encompass like those four types of goals, right? And let's move on right into my entrepreneurs. What do my entrepreneurs want to do? They either want to help start a business. They either want to make sure that business is successful. They want to make sure that business does not fail. And when they talk about, a business, being successful and not failing, there's some criteria. For some of them, it's, the business is making money. For others, it's achieving that fame that they're looking for. Some want just like that branding presence there. So when, they say, hey, drpierresblog.com, boom, it's like, oh, I know who that is. Like, I know who that guy is. Like, I listen to his podcast all the time, right? Like, that's what they want from, their business, right? And when you're first starting out, and a lot of times you're kind of starting out alone on your journey, whether it's be to get healthier, whether it's be to have that successful business, you tend to try to do everything on your own, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? And I'm not saying that that's something that you like everyone you should go out and try to get all of the help you can in the beginning. Because if you got the ability, you got a good social circle, sure, if they're there, reach out for it. But a lot of times I could tell you for a lot of people, that's not the option, right? So a lot of the times, they're trying to do it because they want to like remain autonomous. And again, in that word F, that big F word, right? They don't want to fail, right? They don't want to be able to say that the reason why I failed is because I put, this responsibility in this person's hands versus that person's hands, right? Reason why I couldn't lose weight is because that personal trainer, didn't teach me how to lose weight, right? Reason why I'm still taking these medications is because that, that doctor still got me on a million medications, right? Reason why my business didn't make the money it was supposed to make is because I trusted this accountant, right? Like they don't want to put, their goal, right, in hand in someone else's, right? They want to be able to control it, right? And they want to be able to say, if I fail, I fell on my own. And that's okay in the beginning. Like I'm telling you again, I was, I'm pretty techie with it. Like I tell people all the time, if I was not a physician, I'd probably be doing something in the tech world. And like I did pretty much everything on my own, right? Like in fact, as we speak, right, like I do a lot of the stuff on my own, right? Like I do my blogging, I do my podcasting, I do my videos, I edit them, I put them on the website, I post them, I market them. I do all these things on my own because I happen to be very tech savvy with it, right? But the general person can't do all that, right? Like in a general, the normal business maker probably may not be able to understand what it is to make a website, a landing page, what it is to market, what it is to do all of these things here. So that's something that may be out of the scope of their reach, right? But for me, because I know how to do it, I tend to do it all, right? And because again, if I'm thinking about my health, right, because I know how to like read and look up all of the different exercise regimens and look up all of the different diets. Of course, I should be able to do this myself. I don't need any help, right? I'm just gonna stop taking my medications, right? Because some website that I read said I don't need to take my medications, right? Like I'm gonna take this ownership on my own, right? And that's where, in the beginning, maybe we can stay afloat, but in the middle, in the end, especially when you're trying to get to your goal and you can kind of almost see that finish line, that's where we get hit like a ton of bricks, right? So that's where I want to make sure everybody's at, right? Like I want to acknowledge that, hey, like I understand, like we all have goals, right? Because we all have our goals, whether it's be, to get healthy, whether it be to, to get a bigger business, make more money, whatever your goal is, we all have that type of goal. And we understand why you may want to do it on our own, but we got to understand, right, that it's not the way to go, right? Especially if you want to fully be successful, right? Again, no fully successful person is able to do it 100% on their own, right? They just can't. And it's not a bad thing. Like I said, it's not a bad thing to do it, but you have to understand that eventually you're going to hit that wall where you're not going to be able to, go any further, right? You're not going to be able to lose more weight, right? You're not going to be able to get off your medications. You're not going to be able to make more money. All of these things you're not going to be able to do if you do not, start relinquishing some of those goals, right? And that's where I'm here, like, especially in this point, right? Like, you got to get to the time where you, like, take that responsibility where, like, yes, I'm ready to pass on this task, right? Like, I'm ready. Like, again, I got to the point after that hour, I said, you know what, Barry? You cannot, like, do this mixer thing, right? Like whatever you're trying to do with this mixer thing, you just can't do it. Go ahead and email customer service. And I email customer service, right? Like that's, and again, I got a response in like a day, right? Like it took that quick and they were like, oh, just do this and that, boom. And of course, I didn't know that. I didn't know how to do it, but of course they're the professionals, right? That's what they do. And I realized in that hour of a time, right? Like, especially I know some people, it's easier for them to think about it in terms of like dollar amounts, right? So for me as a physician, entrepreneur, from a consulting standpoint, because I consult, physicians and other health professionals, right? Like I charge about $300 to $500 an hour, right, for consulting fees, right? So imagine, right, like that hour I spent trying to mess with my mixer for my podcast essentially lost me an opportunity to make $300 to $500, right? For $300 to $500, right? Like, so when you think about it in that terms, right? Like, how much are you costing yourself, right, by doing tasks that you shouldn't be doing, right? If you're, and I always when I'm talking to my physicians, first thing I start out telling them is like, what are you worth, right? Like, what is your worth? Like, give me $1. I don't want to hear like, some theoretical like, thing, right? Give me $1 amount of what you think you're worth. And once they give me that worth, I say, well, like, how much does it cost for you to like do that task over there? And you start realizing that like, should I really be, again, a person like me spending, quote, again, $300 to $500, doing a mixer issue when someone emailed it, when I just a quick email and I got to answer so quickly. Right? Of course not, right? Like I'm losing money, right? And you have to think about it in those terms, right? Like, am I, the task that I'm doing, the task that I'm trying to hold on for, for dear life, because I'm super type A, am I actually losing money trying to hold on to that task, right? And once you start thinking about it in those terms, once you start thinking about it, especially in the dollar amount, you start realizing that, you know what? I shouldn't be over here, right? I shouldn't be trying to do all, A through Z, right? Because it's just not beneficial. And of course I can't focus, and, you start becoming less efficient, right? Less, when I speak to my patients in my office, right, and they're trying to control their blood sugar, right, or they're trying to, get off their medications, and, they hit like this rock, right? They hit like this wall they were right there, but like for some reason they can't get over the hump, right? And they spend so much time trying to get over the hump that they fail to do so. And once they fail to do so, what happens? They fail to do so, they fail to hit their goal, right? They fail to hit their goal, they get depressed, right? And a whole cycle of things happens, right? When all they could have done is say, hey, Dr. Pierre, I'm at this point, I'm right there. I want to get off my medications. I just don't know how to, right? And I could have been like, oh, well, just do this, boom. And then all of a sudden, the light is so much brighter. Because they're using their time to maximize, right? Like when it comes to this health thing, like I'm there, right? Like I'm quote unquote expert, right? When it comes to listing about a person who does like construction, right? You put me in a Home Depot, I am as lost as can be, right? But you talk about health and I'm right here, right? Like I'm worth every penny of that $300 to $500, right? But when you talk about, let's say, putting up a tree house or something, some random thing like that. Like you got to build something, man, I am nowhere near worth $300 to $500, right? And a lot of y'all are, you're worth $300 to $500 when you're doing your 1 to 2 tasks, but then you try to do, tasks 3 through 10 and you're worth pennies over there, right? And you're spending so much time trying to do a task where your self-worth is like pennies. And that's how you want to think about it, right? Like if I'm doing task A over here, like am I maximizing my personal self-worth and my personal dollar amount, right? Because you get to that point, then you really start understanding like, yeah, I'm like, I can't do that. That's just not for me, right? I gotta let that go. And I've had patients in the past, especially when we've talked about, trying to, control their blood pressure. And, they're reading all of these different remedies and all of these natural supplements. And they're doing, and not to say that there's no natural supplements that work, because there's actually plenty. But the problem is that the sites that they're reading, where they're getting their information from, is all wrong. And they don't know it's all wrong. It's all wrong. If they could have just spent some time and say, hey, doc, I'm trying to get off my medications, or I'm trying to do more natural medications, what ones do you recommend? And I could just, oh, well, here, I got a nice list for you. And I could have saved them all the trouble. But no, they spend weeks and months with uncontrolled blood sugars, uncontrolled blood pressures, because they keep choosing the wrong item, right? Because they keep, instead of focusing their craft where their self-worth becomes maximized, they're wasting their time reading one website or the other, right? Or they're in one forum or the other. Same thing for my business folks, right? I have a lot of business folks, especially again, my tech friends who are pretty, they're pretty up to date when it comes to these types of things, and they know of it, but they don't really know how to do it, right? Like they just know of, social media and landing pages. They know of email mailing lists, but they don't really understand like how it works and how you really should maximize it. But what do? They put all of their, their time and their commitment trying to focus in on those things right there. And then I ask them, I said, what do you think your self-worth is if you're trying to put it over there, right? You're worth pennies over there, but you're worth a whole bunch of more money when you're on this side right here, right? Let's focus our efforts on, activities that like maximize dollar amount and minimize our time and our, occupancy, right? Like our space, right? Whether it be mental, whether it be physical, like minimize those in areas where you're worth pennies. And they, I think they took it pretty good, and they understand that delegating a role does not mean that, you're giving up your opportunity for your goal, right? You're just trying to get it done a little bit quicker. And I think that's where it's at, right? Like you're trying to become as efficient as possible, but your lack of efficiency is due to the fact that you want to do it all, right? You want to do it all. You want to know it all. You want to have the credit 100%. And a lot of y'all shouldn't be trying to get credit 100%, right? Like you need that help, right? Like again, I needed that help this week, right? And I could have, saved myself an hour. I could have watched Married to Medicine. I could have watched Curb Your Enthusiasm. But no, here I go. I'm messing with this audio mixer, trying to get right for something that is not even happening anytime soon. So that's where I want to go, right? So like I can tell you in the world of, Dr. Barry, right? Like I am actually working on my website. And if you go to my website right now, drpierresblog.com, of course, where you got all of my great show notes. If you go to my website right now, that's all me. That's all me. Like I built that, from scratch. Like, and it took me, I want to say weeks on end, right? And the reason why it took me weeks on end is because, again, it's not like my quote unquote, my day job didn't stop, right? So I'm taking care of patients in the morning, from like 7, 8 o'clock at night to 7, 8 o'clock in the morning to about, 5, 6 at night. And then, I'm coming home. I got to take care of all, my kids. I got 3 kids. I'm taking care of them. I'm feeding them. I'm bathing them. It's daddy time, right? So I'm doing all of those activities. And then we got to put them to sleep. So I may not even get started on my business, activity till like almost like 10, 11 o'clock, right? So imagine, right, like all that time that I can't really use during the day to focus on like, my extracurricular activity, which is all Dr. Pierre's blog has been, and the world of Dr. Pierre has been. I can't really get started at till like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And of course I got to sleep. So I may not, I may work from like 10 to like 2 in the morning, just working on the website, trying to put it all together while still continuing the marketing, while still continuing to blog and everything. At that time, I just started podcasting, so I didn't have any podcasts at the time, but I was doing some videos occasionally. But like, so I imagine like it took me weeks on weeks on weeks. But now I'm getting ready to like update my website, make it a little bit more fresher, more cleaner, more faster. What do you think I did, right? You think I'm going to like, waste my time, to build another website? No. Can I do it if like I absolutely had to? Of course, like I've done it before. But no, I'm gonna give it to a web designer. And I talked to him the other day. I was like, oh, how long do you think this will take? Oh, he said like 3 days. Like imagine, right? Something that took me weeks, he's gonna do this in like 3 days. And why is he gonna be able to do it in 3 days? It's because building websites for this designer, like that's what he does, right? Like that's where his worth is maximized, right? Like he's not over here trying to tell y'all, to eat healthy and worry about your diabetes and worry about your rheumatoid arthritis, right? Because he's worth pennies if he was trying to do that, right? Even if he could. He's over here, he said, no, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to maximize what I do. And that's what's building websites, right? And I can do those very efficiently and very quickly, right? And something that's would take me weeks probably just to do, he's going to be able to knock over in like a week, if at the most. It'll probably take a week because, for most of our physicians, we're so busy. Sometimes it's going to be a lot of email back and forth. I may not even get back to an email in like a day or so, right? So I'm going to be holding him up more than, him holding me up. So that's why I want you to kind of get to, right? I want you to get to the point where and that's when, again, I'm trying to make that transition, right? Like I'm trying to understand that, I am not worth a lot of money, right? Trying to do all of this stuff right here, right? But the things I am worth a lot of money in, that's where I need to maximize, right? Like I'm worth a lot of money when I'm consulting, other physicians and health professionals, right? I'm worth a lot of money, right? When I'm going to speak, at these, different events, right? I'm worth a lot of money, even doing these podcasts, right? Like I'm worth more money doing that, right? I may not be worth as much money when it comes to editing the podcast, putting up together, sending it to iTunes and all that stuff that, that goes on the back end. Like my worth isn't maximized there, right? Like that's something where I got to understand where, I may need to give off some of these duties, right? Because it doesn't benefit me, right? Like I don't get any extra benefit. I'm glad, yes, I can do it, but I don't get any extra benefit from doing it, right? And that's where I want you to be able to, take yourself, right? Especially if you're listening to this right now and, you're all about your health, right? Like you're all about your health, right? You're all about, becoming a better you. You're all about, living as long as possible. You're all about, getting rid of all your medications. You're all about avoiding, seeing the doctor's office as much as possible, right? If you're all about that, right? I want you to really look into yourself and say, you know what? Am I doing all that I can to make sure that goal happens? Right? Am I reading what I'm supposed to reading? Am I going to the experts, right? Like, again, I have a good friend, Dr. Jamie Hardy, right? Like she's an expert, right? Lifestyle pharmacist. She's an expert at getting people off their medications, right? Like, again, who else would be an expert but a pharmacist, right? Like that's what they do, right? Like pharmacy is her thing. Medications is her thing, right? So who else would be able to tell you at a much better rate, right? Like how to do that, right? Like that's, again, Like let's think about it, right? Like this makes common sense, right? You want to get off your medications, right? Dr. Barry may not be the best person to go to, right? You may want to go to like a Dr. Jamie, right? But if you want to just learn about, your diseases and learn how to manage your diseases better, right? That's when you're going to come to see Dr. Barry, right? Because Dr. Barry is going to take care of you. He's going to educate you. And he's going to get you on the right foot, right? Where you can go and maximize and do what you need to do at home. Same thing in the business world, right? If you're a business entrepreneur, right? Like you're a business entrepreneur, and for example, right, you are a podcaster, right? And you want to be able to market your podcast, right? Like, wouldn't you want to talk to someone like, Raina Campbell, right? Who is a host of a great podcast. If you not have heard Dreams and Drive. Wouldn't you want to talk to her, right? Wouldn't you want a consultation from her? In fact, I think she's actually doing consultations now, right? I'll put a link in the show notes because I know she is. I just don't know what the link is. But wouldn't you want like a consultation for her? Someone who's an expert at doing like that, right? This girl got like 300,000 downloads, right? She's one you may want to talk to, right? If you're trying to get your business, and your podcast to that next level, right? If you're a doctor who is tired of being boxed in of the clinic life or the hospital life or wherever you're at, right? Like, wouldn't you want to talk to someone who speaks to a lot of physicians, right? Like, again, I got a friend, Dr. Nee Darko, right? He has a great podcast, Docs Outside the Box, right? And he focuses on a lot of doctors who just do things that aren't like the quote unquote doctor life, right? Like, he's a person you want to talk to, right? You want to kind of know, like, hey, Dr. Darko, like, I see what you're doing over here, right? Like, how can I, get in your space, right? Like, that's what I really want you guys to employ, right? Like, I want you to employ understanding that there are going to be experts in your field, and not saying that you're not an expert, right? Because, again, we're not taking that away, right? Like, when it comes to this health thing, Dr. Barry's an expert, right? But Dr. Barry knows he shouldn't be messing with no mixer, right? Like, so I know that now. I wish I had known that last week, but I know that now, right? Dr. Barry knows that he should not be messing with no mixer, right? Because he ain't the expert over there. Like, let the experts handle that. And Dr. Barry can maximize his talent on this other side over here. And that's where I want you to get to, right? I want you to be able to like look in your life, look at your goal, right? You're going to remember the goal. What is my goal? Who are the experts that can get me to my goal? And then maximize it over there, right? Like, maximize your time and your efficiency so you can get to that goal a lot quicker, right? That's where, this podcast, this episode is here to take you to, right? Like, I want to help motivate you, right? To say, you know what? Dr. Barry's right. Like, I've been wasting way much time, trying to be an everything person, and it's clearly not working. Like, I'm at the end of my whip. I'm ready to quit, right? Like, we hate that word, right? Nobody wants to quit, right? But a lot of times when people want to get to the point where they want to quit, it's because they're taking so much of that, that burden on their own, whether it be to get healthy, whether it be to have a better business, make more money, not feel like whatever that goal is, they take so much of it on their own that they have not even been able to give away some of that responsibility, right? So if you don't get anything from this podcast today, right, understand that Dr. Barry says it's okay to give up some of that responsibility because he wants you to maximize what you're actually worth, right? And what you're actually worth may not be having you do 100 different things, right? It may have you only doing like 10 of those things and 90 other people doing the rest, right? Because those 90 other people, right, like that's their thing, right? That's where that's where their worth is. That's where their worth is maximized. And over here, it's not, right? Like, you trying to be the best you, but you can't be the best you and the best everybody else. Okay? And that's it, Dr. Barry, board certified internist, founder of drpierresblog.com, the founder of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, whether it be the podcast, whether it be the video. I'm going to catch you guys next week. And remember, our goal with Dr. Barry, in the world of Dr. Barry, is to prevent the preventable death one person at a time. See you next week. Hey, Dr. Barry here. You have just listened to another great episode of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. I hope you're excited and hope you learned something from today's episode. I hope you learned from all of the episodes that you get a chance to listen to. Before you leave, if you not have already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I am everywhere where you like to listen to podcasts at, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, wherever you like listening to podcasts, the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry is there. Also, go ahead and follow me on my social media outlets. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, as well as Twitter, all at Lunch Learn Pod, whether it be Twitter, twitter.com/lunchlearnpod, facebook.com/lunchlearnpod, and instagram.com/lunchlearnpod, where you can, get any videos, any pictures I may post, any messages or writing. So please follow me on there right after you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, and right before you leave me a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or wherever you can actually leave me a review. I'm much appreciative of all of you guys' support. And like I said earlier in the show, I will see you next week.